Hello and welcome to the second in the series of the Socitm PSN Solutions Update. I want to talk to you today about some new advice and guidance that's just been issued by GDS, which is on the gov.uk website, that focuses on network principles. Now, there's been a fundamental shift over the last 6 to 9 months around the PSN, and the idea and approach now is not to actually trust the network, but put the trust in the access and data on the services which are contained on the network. This is the approach that's been used in a similar way for some considerable time by the NHS with the N3 network. Now, many of you will know that although you can get access onto the N3 network, you may not actually be able to access any services once you're on there. But the advantage of that approach is that it makes it far easier to allow connections from various types of devices and third-party organisations such as voluntary organisations, the charity sector and partners. So the main thing around the network guidance is to actually understand that all of it is couched in the language of the Agile development process. Now, with Agile, it means that things are user-driven and are delivered according to user needs. This is one of the fundamental principles of this new network approach. It's also really important to put the service protection as near to the application as possible. The idea of this is that for corporate networks, and do bear in mind that the PSN still has its own requirements for security and compliance through the coder connection, these principles that I'm talking about now are general principles which would apply to a council's network, for argument's sake, or that of a fire and rescue service where you're using your own devices and things of that nature. When you connect into other networks or shared services, you need to be aware of any data sharing agreements and MOUs that may be in place around those types of shared services. So protect the network. It becomes increasingly important, especially with the types of attacks and threats that we're seeing out there at the moment, to make sure that you have got proper network intrusion detection systems in place. It's also beginning to be increasingly important to make sure that you have a forensics readiness policy. Now, CESG has produced guidance on intrusion detection systems. That is contained in a Good Practice Guide number 13, GPG 13. Forensic readiness information is contained in CESG's guide GPG 18. Forensics readiness might not prevent something happening, but it will be able to show you what happened, why, and possibly how it can be prevented. When we do an IT health check, we spoke last time in detail about the scope of IT health checks. It's really important to understand why you're doing the health check. We're still seeing an awful lot of anecdotal evidence of compliance checking out there, tick box exercises, rather than actually designing networks and solutions to prevent problems and to enable transformational service delivery. So it's really important moving forward that we take forensic readiness seriously, because network incidents, security incidents will happen, but it's a case of making sure we know how to respond to them. So equally important is to have a really good incident management and incident response process and procedure in place. These sorts of things should also be exercised on a regular basis, or at least once a year. If you have a network breach, a technical breach or an attack or a data exfiltration, the time to sort this out is not after it's happened. It needs to be an integral part of the planning process when you design and implement new systems. These network principles are only guidance as well. It is possible to vary them and to do so according to user need. But the main thing now, in line with the cyber risk Principles, which again are published on the gov.uk website, is to make sure that all security decisions are documented. Make sure that you don't have documentation for the sake of it, but do make sure that if you make a decision, a risk-based decision, through the information asset owners and the CSIRO, that decision is properly recorded. This also applies when you're doing things in a novel way around your PSN code of connection. Colleagues in PSN are not trying to catch anybody out, and they will look at innovative and novel ways of doing things, providing you can evidence that you have done this in a certain way, and although you might not have all of the technical controls in place, you do have a good forensics readiness policy, you do have forensics capability on the network, and indeed intrusion detection, logging and alerting. There isn't going to be any one size fits all in future, but one thing is certain: the number of attacks and the threats that are on networks and through the internet are not going to be decreasing anytime soon. So as we move forward, it is vitally important that we know how to detect these attacks, how to respond to these attacks, and how to learn from them. Last time I recommended to you that you join the CISP platform, which is part of Search UK. I'm pleased to be able to tell you now that DCLG, the Department of Communities and Local Government, has just started to do a programme of work which is concentrating on local cyber resilience. This work is going to have three strands to it. Firstly, to support the local government node on the CISP platform with advice and guidance around resilience and resilient ways of working in a cyber environment. Secondly, a number of seminars that will be run during the autumn and into next year, which will go around the regions and elsewhere to work with the local resilience forums to provide cyber threat briefings and cyber threat advice and guidance and awareness raising to local authorities in England and through the local resilience forums. The final strand of work in the work programme will be the production of guidance, which will look to provide a leadership framework to help CSIROs and practitioners understand why resilience is so important. As we move into more shared services, resilience and availability of services and networks will become more important. This also applies to web services. So this work, being run by DCLG through the CIS platform, will enable local authorities to better prepare and to respond to cyber incidents. I'm also pleased to be able to say that during the Socitm Autumn Conference, which will be held in Leicester, there will be available one-to-one slots to talk about PSN issues and cyber resilience issues, but mostly you'll be able to book a one-to-one appointment talking to myself around your COCO or anything that you want to know about the new ways of working. So do book yourself onto the Socitm conference as well in the autumn up in Leicester. Thank you very much for watching, and I look forward to bringing you more updates next time.